Hey everyone, it's Dr. Pew's Reviews here. I just wanted to do a quick tabletop coverage of the new Glock 19 Gen 6. Some differences between that, and here's my Gen 4 that I upgraded from. And I also over here have a Glock 45 Gen 5, which is pretty similar, just a 17 frame, 19 slide, but really not much of a difference between the 19 and the 45. First off, this is gonna be a little bit different because I kind of want to talk about the things that no one is really talking about, and that's some of the cons specifically with this when it comes to actually usability. But first thing is, let's just kind of talk about general things that I'm pretty sure everyone's already seen before. Big difference is this stippling job that they've done here. They have this stippling up front as well and a little ledge so that you can kind of put your thumb there and press down when shooting. This is a big detail that I think people have really appreciated, but for someone like me, I actually don't prefer this. And the reason is because when I shoot, I typically shoot with a very high grip and actually my support hand thumb up on the slide. So you can't really do that. You have to kind of come down a little bit lower. And again, this is fine if you shoot this way. I just shoot a little odd. I prefer my thumb up top, and you can see here on the Gen 4 that you actually have a little lip up here where you can do that. So if they had just stippled here, I would still be able to have my high ride grip, which I personally prefer, but it doesn't take long to get used to this. And another pro, I guess, if you think about it, is with your thumb lower on the slide, if you have a flashlight, that transition to actuate the flashlight would be a little quicker and more user-friendly. But the stippling is kind of the big thing, the grip. It is definitely grippier. It feels way better. There's a palm swell here, and it's kind of hard to tell probably in the video, but it is significant, and you can see it kind of gets a little fat here. There's a small step down by the mag release and then an additional step down where your thumb sits. And that actually feels really, really nice. And I love that. It has the ambidextrous slide release, which the Gen 4 does not have. I don't really care about that so much because I'm a right-handed guy. And if I shoot offhand, well, I don't. I still transition sideways like this rather than switching my hand per se. So for me, it doesn't really matter. Plus, you can always just rack the slide, which, whatever. It's a feature that people like, so I get that they put it there. Slide releases, they're the standard ones that you see on the Gen 5. While on my Gen 4, I kind of have this enhanced one, which I do prefer over these more flush ones. But again, it's not that big of a deal. When you're shooting it in real life, you don't really notice it too much. So yeah, grip is kind of like the main thing on the Gen 6. Yes, there's some changes with the serration. Yes, there's some changes in the mag well. There's a little bit more of a flare here than you get with your Gen 4. When reloading these, I don't really notice a difference, to be honest, but it is wider. So if that's something that you like, great, it's there. Really, the big difference is this new optic system. And this new optic system, they use a different version. They used to have an MOS, which was crap. Now this is kind of a little bit more similar to how FN does it, where there's actually a groove cut down the middle, and you put these little polymer plates in to fit either an Armor, Delta Point Pro, and I don't remember what the third one is. I think it's a Doctor Footprint. It's a way better system, which I like, but let me just kind of show you something. And again, you might not really notice this on camera, but because it uses this plate system, the actual optic cut itself is higher than it needs to be, if that makes sense. So here on a Zev slide, it's cut specifically for an RMR. You can cut way lower down in here because you don't need any kind of plate for this optic. And when you do that, you actually get a lot better of this co-witnessing, which again, it might be hard to see on camera. It's almost like a lower 1/3, which is really nice. But if you look here, this optic actually sits higher. Obviously, these are not suppressor height sights, so it's difficult to appreciate, won't co-witness. But if you put these side by side and you kind of look at it, Yes, it would co-witness with the suppressor high. This is a standard 429 AmeriGlow suppressor high sight. It would, but it wouldn't be perfect. So your optic does sit a little bit higher, and that might not bother some of you, but to be honest with you, I don't really like that as much. I want my optic to sit as low as possible to give me the best co-witness as possible. The way that I would fix this per se is this is a Holosun 507. I would go with a red dot that has an extra low deck height. And the only one that I can think of that has that is the Sig Romeo X. I don't have one here, but the Sig Romeo X enclosed has a very low deck height. And if you put that in there, I think it's like 8 mils, which is probably a good 20% lower than it is on this Holosun. You would probably get the exact same result as you would with this Holosun cut lower, if that makes sense. So I would recommend that. I know that the new Vortex enclosed optics sit high like these Holosuns do. The Venom, the cheaper one that doesn't have the solar panel, is higher than the solar panel one. I don't know why they did that. Okay, I don't have one in front of me to show you that, but for some reason they did that. So if you were to put a Venom enclosed on here, I don't think you would co-witness with AmeriGlow 429 or standard suppressor height sights. You might need to go a little taller. Again, I don't have it in front of me, but that's kind of my biggest gripe about this pistol. It's how high up your optic will sit. The mounting system itself works great. I haven't had any issues with it. It's reliable, which is reassuring. It's just if you really care about a co-witness, some people don't, but if you care about it, you need to invest in a lot lower deck height. Holosun makes an EPS that also has a really low deck height, but again, the EPS, I don't think they have a plate designed for that EPS as of right now. So that kind of puts that outside the window. I think that the only one off the top of my head is the Delta Point Pro footprint, which would be that Romeo X. Put in the comments if I'm wrong. Tell me if there's another low deck height that's going to work on an RMR Delta Point Pro, or I guess the Doctor cut. I don't even know what that means, to be honest. I never had a Doctor optic. But if you think the EPS fits on the Doctor, maybe it does, that would be another option, I guess. But that's really about it. I mean, again, this is a Glock 45, and when you feel them in your hand, I mean, it is night and day difference. The grip texture is just so much better. The shootability is so much better in this Gen 6. If you have a Gen 5, honestly, it's probably not worth paying the money just to get one of these. The reason I did is because, again, Glock 45, I don't have a Gen 5 Glock 19. I just have a Gen 4, which has this finger grooves. So for me, it was time to just move on and get something new without the grooves. And that's why I kind of upgraded. So I think from the Gen 4 to the Gen 6, I think it's worth it. Gen 3 to Gen 6, I think it's worth it for sure. If you're a new shooter and you don't have anything, buy the Gen 6. Don't buy Gen V, don't buy Gen 5. Not worth it. But if you have a Gen 5, like I said, I mean, this gun is awesome to shoot. I love this gun. Yes, this one's better, but it's not that much better, if that makes sense. Trigger's another thing. I know a lot of people were talking about trigger. I will say that the flat face trigger is what it sounds like. It's literally just, I think, a different look rather than function. When you actually press and feel this trigger, you get some creep. You get like a second creep. See, look at all that slop. And then, look, it's still creeping, still creeping. Then it clicks, okay? It ain't great, okay? Comparing that to the Gen 4, it's really, I couldn't tell you the difference other than one's flat. Like, look, creep, more creep, wall, break. This Gen 4 actually might feel a little more crisp, and that could just be variance between models in the fact that I have 3,500 rounds through this, and it's nice and broken in, and I'm used to this one. This feels a little more crisp. This guy feels a little more spongy. Again, that's probably just a variation. If you got a different model, I'm sure it would be, maybe a little different. But again, there's nothing to run home. It's just a Glock trigger. Like if you're thinking you're buying this, get an upgraded trigger, it's a better trigger. It's not. It's just flat. See, look at that. It still hasn't broken. Look at all that slop. Then it goes. The actual break is crisp. And let me show you that reset. So here's reset. The reset is amazing. It's just that initial shot before you reset is a little spongy, but again, it's a Glock trigger. Again, I'm not shitting on this trigger at all. It really doesn't feel any different than this Glock does here. They all feel the exact same. It's just a different geometry. So again, it's not really an upgrade. It just looks a little bit cooler, maybe if you're into that. So just quick summary, what I think about this. Yes, I love this pistol. I think it is the best Glock variation. The grip is super grippy. It feels awesome. It's a great shooting experience. I think it is a noticeable upgrade, especially from the Gen 4. From the Gen 5, I don't know. Because again, like I said, I shoot with a high-righted thumb. So I kind of prefer this. This undercut here on the trigger guard, you don't really, I don't really notice when I shoot, to be honest with you. But I don't think it's really worth the upgrade from a Gen 5 per se. A Gen 5 that you custom cut yourself to fit your optic to sit even lower is probably better than getting a Gen 6 with their new optic cut that's higher riding. Again, the only benefit to this optic cut is that if you want to change your optic, you don't know what optic you want, it gives you options. If you know what you like to shoot, a custom milled slide will always just be better. It will fit better, it'll be tighter on there, and it's going to sit lower. End of story. But yeah, that's about it for this. I got this for 650 beans. So it's really not any more expensive than a Gen 5 MOS. It's worth it again, I think, if you're upgrading from a lower generation. But from a Gen 5, like again, it's cheaper just to cut your own optic if you need an optic slide on this. If you have an MOS system, you're kind of out of luck. I'm sorry for you. Maybe it'd be worth upgrading to this new optic cut. But that's about it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Again, if you know of an optic that will have a lower deck height that sits lower on this, please let me know, because I don't want to spend $500 on a Sig Romeo X, but at this point I might just have to, given the circumstances of the way the layout on this firearm is. But that's it for now. If you have any questions, let me know. See you guys.